Cali class, Cali class, Cali class. God, I love this show's earnestness. It really, it warms my heart so much. Alright, time to do a little Picard maneuver here. Hello, interwebs! I am here to review the, sadly, season finale of my favorite Star Trek show, Star Trek Lower Decks, Season 3, Episode 10, The Stars at Night. I knew it. I knew the title. Don't look at me. Also, I'm just going to say before I get to my review, do you like my new jacket? I got a new Star Trek jacket here. I think it's pretty bomb. It's the Star Trek Strange New Worlds jacket. It's pretty cool. A little uncomfortable to wear for a review, but screw it. I'm showing off. Anyways, let's actually talk about this finale. I'll stay spoiler-free up front, and then we'll get into spoilers in the back. I adored this episode. This was, thinking on it, maybe I'm just coming right off the episode and I might be a bit biased towards it, but I actually think this might be my favorite finale that they've done on Lower Decks so far. It managed to pay off so many of the storylines that have been going on this season, not just in like the ones that were very overtly obvious that they were going to be building towards something like the Rutherford implant storyline that they've had earlier on in the season, even building off of last season into season 2, but also in smaller, subtler stories that like began just last episode with Mariner and the automated Texas class ships, and also like guest appearances that we've seen throughout the season as well, like a recurring character that's been coming up over and over and over again actually has a bit of payoff here. And then there is a payoff in this episode that is not one that I knew I needed, but when it happened, it was the most beautiful thing I think I've ever seen in a Star Trek show. I was actually crying at it, and it was so wonderful. If you've seen the episode, you already know what I'm talking about. I won't spoil the moment for you, but it was so great. Like, this episode just paid off so many things so expertly, and it's why I love Lower Decks so much. I truly think that it was just absolutely fantastic. Honestly, I'm so glad that this is not the series finale for Lower Decks, because I want there to be 7 seasons and 4 movies, at least one of them good. But if this had been the series finale, like if someone told me, it's like, Jessie, this is the last episode of Star Trek Lower Decks, I would have been like, you know what? I would be happy with this one, because this just felt like a culmination of everything that we've seen in Lower Decks so far. Obviously, there's still some ongoing storylines here and there that we want to see completed and character arcs that we want to see go further, but this really felt like just a great culmination, and not only the season, but the entire series. Not only that, the other thing that I liked about this episode was that it had a subtle sort of political storyline as well around automation. It's not like the most radical version of that storyline ever, considering that, other science fiction stories have done like automation type tales as well, but it is in there, and I think it's done really, really well, and actually cuts the core of what Star Trek has always been about like humanity going to the stars, human beings getting to be there and getting to show empathy for others, versus like an automated system that just sort of like, oh, we'll just go through it, we'll do the function, but we're not actually going to do that human part of it to this journey of exploration. And I think like that really cuts to the core of what Star Trek has always been about, and I love that it's told in a kind of political way. The most radical version of it? No, but I think one that's deeply nuanced and cuts to the earnestness of both Lower Decks and Star Trek. So, that is my thoughts for the spoiler-free section of this video, but let's get into spoilers, because oh boy, I have so much to discuss. I am so excited to talk about this finale with y'all. So we start off our episode with Captain Freeman and Admiral Buenamigo in a meeting discussing the future of the California class's ships coming right off of last episode, and we have a really great discussion here again about automation. Like, Captain Freeman did screw up last episode, she made some mistakes, and she was set up to fail, as we later will learn this episode, but she's saying like, look, it's important that humanity wants to go to the stars. You shouldn't just automate all these ships and just have this Texas class ship that Admiral Buenamigo is putting forward take over the fleet, because that cuts against like humanity wanting to go into the stars to explore. And Buenamigo makes the argument like, nah, we're going to be better, we can do it more efficiently, and there are other ships that are crewed. We don't need to have this second contact, can just be automated or whatever. It doesn't need the personal touch as well. And so we have our stake set of the California class ships all getting cut, not just the Cerritos, but all of them. So I love the stakes being set up there as well. So that was all great. And then we cut to Mariner and Petra off doing Indiana Jones type of stuff. This was fun. The Ferengi chasing after her and sort of running through the like tunnels and things. It was just Indiana Jones types of things. And I will say, you know, I talked about last episode in my review my feelings of Jennifer and Mariner's relationship. And while Petra and Mariner aren't like in a relationship just yet, I actually like their dynamic a hell of a lot more than Jennifer and Mariner. Just I feel like Petra like understands Mariner a little bit more and kind of fits her vibe a little bit more than Jennifer does, but maybe that's just me looking for that. We'll see if that relationship develops or into future seasons. I'd be curious to see what they do. I'd be very excited. I'll talk more about that and my feelings towards the end of this episode on that front. Moving on though, we have a quick little scene where Captain Freeman and Admiral Buenamigo are sort of facing off, and Buenamigo says, "Look, we'll promote you to Fleet Admiral of all the Texas class ships. We'll give you 4 epaulets, 4 whole epaulets," which I love to see. Like, the Starfleet loves its epaulets. But Freeman says, like, "No, I'm going to challenge you to a second contact race," which is such a fun little idea. It's like, what does that even mean? To try to see which team does it better. So I liked seeing that. That was a cool, like, again, setting the stakes for the episode. Also, one other thing that I forgot to mention just a second ago is we had a quick scene where Boimler tells the rest of Beta Shift, our lower deckers, that the California class is going to be decommissioned, and he sort of makes fun of the other bridge crew, and Shax comes in when he's making fun of Shax, because of course he does, and he's so hurt. I was like, oh no, Shax is he's so sensitive, my baby bear. So I was like, no, he didn't mean to hurt your feelings, Shax. It happens. Oh, and Boimler just getting untethered from reality was great. But then we cut to our crew getting ready for second contact race, and I just love some of the jokes we have in here. Ransom teaching the crew how to do the Riker maneuver had me dying, like him sitting over the chair and doing the Jonathan Frakes move was phenomenal. I adored that. You just gotta sit in the chair and command it. I also loved the lines like, "We're doing galaxy class engineering here." That was also really good. So all of that was really a lot of fun. And then Boimler tries to connect with Shax later on, and Shax is like, "So you think all Bajorans are the same?" And then he just literally like runs away. I'm like, oh no, Shax is so hurt. But then we have our crew setting out to do the second contact mission. Admiral Buenamigo extremely overconfident, and they're sort of just keeping up with things. I did love that Rutherford is looking at it, and he's like, "Oh, I recognize this code." I'm like, oh no. Is it the code for his thing, for his implant? Is it the Badmiral? Is Admiral Buenamigo the Badmiral? I was proved correct, but I like that I didn't make that connection until right now. I'm like, oh, that is a great setup. Like, I never would have thought to connect those two, but it makes perfect sense. Loved that. Then we get to the second planet, and I adored that they fell behind the Vegas class, or the Texas class here, because Tendi actually stopped and cared and was empathetic about, like, maybe there might be sentient life on this planet. We shouldn't just set it up and possibly kill these people. And I love that the reason that they are actually able to, quote unquote, win the race in the end, even though it sort of doesn't get resolved necessarily because of other stuff happening, but it's because of empathy. It's because Tendi was there and cared. And that feels perfect for her as a character. She would be the character that, like, stands up for science, stands up for, you know, that pays off her arc as that science officer character that we've seen this season, which I really loved, because, you know, one of my big criticisms of episode 8 was, like, Tendi saying, "I want to be a captain," which I thought, I'm excited to see her be a captain. That absolutely tracks to their character, but I thought it might have subtly undercut her science officer storyline. But we get a payoff for her science officer storyline in this episode. So while I would have, you know, liked a few more episodes, that I feel like there was a completed arc for that character that I was worried that we wouldn't get, because now she was going to be set off on this captain storyline. But no, we get it here. Again, lower decks, you're fixing the problems that I thought I had. I adore it. But also, again, goes back to, like, empathy, and, like, humanity needs empathy to be able to go to the stars. Like, that's just a Star Trek idea that the automated ship was never gonna have. So I love that. And then we get to our next planet, which is a reference to the episode Meridian, which is one of the worst episodes of Deep Space Nine, because that's the episode where Jadzia Dax is like, they find this planet that phases in and out of existence, and Jadzia just decides to completely give up her Starfleet career because she met a hot guy on the planet. Like, don't get me wrong, I love hot guys. I'm not going to give up my career for them. Like, they're fun time, but not career fun times. But that, so clearly this phasing planet is a reference to that episode, and I love these people. Like, look, they're just gonna show up and you're just gonna be a dot in the sky. You're not gonna see them. I loved that bit, but obviously our crew does not make it in time, and they fail their second contact race, and Admiral Buenamigo wins the race. But then it turns out that Rutherford discovers that it was indeed not only his implant code that created the Texas-class ships, but his code that he used to create Badgie. And I'm like, oh my god, we're getting Badgie payoffs in this episode. Like, they're just drawn from everywhere for this finale. Loved that. Badgie being the, like, AI that almost tried to kill everyone back in season 1. But also, it gets revealed that the Badmiral that put the implant into Rutherford was Admiral Buenamigo, and he had stolen all of Rutherford's codes and erased his memory because of, just so that he wasn't aware of what happened to him. So that was a great payoff. Did not expect that Admiral Buenamigo was going to be this person, but it makes sense, and it fits, and we discover the reason that he is doing this because everything's so competitive. He kind of gave me Star Trek Into Darkness vibes with Admiral Marcus from that movie, which was like an aspect of the movie that I did like, despite that movie not being great. That I did like that element of it, and he kind of gave me the same vibes here. Not necessarily as militaristic as him, but that same sort of like, I'm trying to, do better, be more efficient. Paradise Lost would also be another Admiral that had the same sort of idea where like they think they can do this better than everybody else, but they sort of corrupting Starfleet's ideals in the process. So doing some cool stuff with that character, but then obviously it turns out Badgie's AI takes control of everything, of the ships, and they kill Admiral Buenamigo. I was like, ooh, damn, I mean, getting his comeuppance, but a bit dark, but it does set the stakes, like they could all die here. And so the Cerritos tries to stop the Texas-class ships from attacking everyone because all of them sort of activate, and they sort of run into warp to get away from the starbase. And I loved the fact this is the payoff of the episode, everybody. Like, I loved this so much, was they were coming up with suggestions for how to stop the Texas class, and Shax says, we can eject the warp core. It's dismissed. And I was like, wait, that actually could have worked. I think that's a cool surprise. And Boimler stands up for Shax and says, listen to Shax. And then Shax gets to eject the warp core, what he's been wanting from day one of this show, and he finally gets to do it, and everyone cheers him on. Like, I thought he was just gonna push a button, but everyone like cheers him on. He goes all the way down to engineering and shoots it out, and he's so happy, and I legitimately had a tear in my eye for how happy this made me. I was like, oh my god, this is the payoff that I didn't know I needed. It was so great and lovely. I adored it to death. And they get to eject it, and it goes out, and they manage to get the one up on the Texas class ships, but they're still in danger. They're still getting beaten. And then all of the California class ships show up, including a bunch of California crews that we've seen from past few seasons and episodes, including the alt version of them that like has the the bug version of Boimler that I thought was hilarious from season 1. And so we get all the California ships, saving them. They beat up the Texas class ships and stop the day, save the day, I should say. And it's like a good victory for the California class ships. I loved it so much. It was perfection. I also forgot to mention we got to see a sexy Sovereign class ship show up to help save the starbase as well. That was always really nice to see. I always love my sexy Sovereign classes. My second favorite class of starship behind the NX-01. Also, by the way, I should say that all the California class ships showing up kind of reminded me of the episode Parallels from Star Trek The Next Generation, where you had all the alternate versions of the USS Enterprise D showing up to take like Worf back to his timeline in that episode. Was a great episode. It kind of gave me that same sort of visual as well. I also forgot to mention the storyline with Mariner as well, because I was going to jump back to it, but I forgot it intersected here. But Mariner doesn't trust Petra because she believes like, oh, I don't like this sort of like clandestine behind the scenes sort of operation. And Petra's like, well, you didn't trust me. And it turns out Admiral Picard, I was like, oh, hey, Admiral Picard. Like, awesome reference there, is funding this initiative. And that makes sense for Picard. He would like to like return artifacts to their proper civilizations. That feels like a Picard sort of thing to do. So it's kind of on the up and up. And Mariner's disappointed because she kind of wants to be back in Starfleet. That's who she is. So she comes back to the California class and does some help rescuing them as well in the finale. That was all really good. I love that payoff for her character. And that leads us to the end few scenes of the episode where we have everyone celebrating, everyone's in the bar, going California class. That was really great. Mariner's back in Starfleet and her mom apologizes to her, and Mariner sort of like actually wants to like earnestly like be a good Starfleet officer again. That pays off her arc for this season, that she is someone who wants to be involved in Starfleet. Like I really like that, and like her wrestling with her ideals. So all of that was great, and then she's going to be the partner to Ransom was also great. Ransom going to be bugged by that, but then Tendi gets a moment with Miglimo, who says, like, you did stand up for science. That was wonderful. Like, again, paying off her arc. But then next comes up, we get the arrival of Talin, the Vulcan character from the episode Weege Dooge. All season, all of us have been wondering, where is Talin? Is she going to show up? Finally, she shows up here in the finale, so that means we'll get her next season. And I love that she's going to be the study buddy for Tendi. That is absolutely perfection. Talin and Tendi seem like such an odd couple pairing that I am so excited to see that going forward. Mwah, what a perfect way to send off that arc for Tendi. And it'll also allow her to be a leader, because that'll showcase her, like, captain skills next season, so that sort of sets up her for that arc. Like, I love that, completing her arc and then continuing it on to the next season and giving us a hint of where it's going to go. And then we end out with everyone sort of celebrating. So, yeah, I think this was a fantastic finale. I think the only knock that I could give it is, like, Mariner gets a conclusion to her arc this season. Tendi gets a conclusion to her arc this season. Rutherford gets a conclusion to his arc with his implant in this episode. Boimler's the only one that I think had less of a completion to his arc. Like, his whole thing is being bold Boimler and this season. And that had a relative payoff in episode 8 to a degree. It was kind of a tangential thing. That I feel like that was where Boimler's arc ended this season back in episode 8. And he doesn't get as much of a conclusion here. He just sort of has that side story with Shax here. But he does get a he gets brought into the bear club now, which is adorable, and he gets a mentor on the bridge crew, which is great for his character, but it doesn't feel like as natural a conclusion for his character arc as I would have thought with the bold Boimler story going on. So that's the only knock that I could give this episode. But that being said, while it is not fully completed in his arc this season, that doesn't mean it can't be continued on into next season. And this episode was already doing so much, included so much for so many characters. I am totally willing to forgive the fact that they didn't fully complete Boimler's arc right now, especially since there probably is more stories to tell with this this element of the character going forward. So it's a criticism if you want to sort of level it at it in this being the finale and not fully bring Boimler's arc to a conclusion here and setting him up for the next one. But it's not really that big of a criticism, because again, I think there's still more story to tell in that range. One other thing that I think wasn't resolved that I would have liked a little bit more resolution on, or at least a mention of, was when Mariner gets back on the ship, we see Jennifer look over at her, but there's not much conversation between those two. And I would have liked at least some sort of acknowledgement or some sort of small conversation between the two of them that acknowledged what happened between them last episode. Whether or not it was just Mariner going up to Jennifer or Jennifer going up to Mariner and one of them saying, like, look, I don't want to talk about it right now, and then we save it for season 4 to be like a plot line picked up down the road, that would have been fine, but I would have liked at least a little bit more than just a quick glance from Jennifer in this final moment of the episode. That's my only other criticism that I have. Also, I almost forgot, because I missed it my first watch of this episode, so I'm filming this later on because I totally missed this. There's an after credit sequence. Badgie shows up. Badgie gets Rutherford's implant and is doing some evil stuff. So excited to see where they're going with that and who has Rutherford's implant. So some interesting stuff for season 4 coming up. So that's my thoughts on this episode of Star Trek Lower Decks. This season has been, as always, fantastic. I love Lower Decks. There's a reason why it's my favorite Star Trek show. No offense to any of the other Star Trek shows. I adore them all as well. I'm excited to be talking about Star Trek Prodigy as well, so subscribe to the channel so you don't miss those reviews. But in the end of the day, this is my favorite show for a reason, and it's episodes like this. The earnestness, the joy, the caring, the talking about Star Trek's issues, the fact that this show always has a positive outlook on life, and yet it feels so joyous in every moment. Not that all Star Trek shows don't have that to a degree, but this show, I think, really just fully encapsulates it, and just reminds me why Star Trek Lower Decks is, honest to God, my favorite Star Trek show, at least of this modern crop of Star Trek shows. Definitely in contention for my favorite of all time. I love this show. I'm going to miss it in its off season. I have to wait another year or whatever for season 4, which is frustrating, but I'm very excited to see it. And CBS, or Viacom CBS, whatever your company name is now, renew this show for a season 5. Do it. I know you're watching. IFCBS. I'm certain you are. Renew Lower Decks. If you're going to cancel all the other Star Trek shows. I don't want that. Please don't. But if you're going to cancel all of them, just give me Lower Decks in perpetuity. 7 seasons and 4 movies. That's what we need. I demand it. Anywho, I'll leave it there. Love y'all. Take care of yourselves. Live long and prosper. And check out my Star Trek Prodigy review, which should be coming soon.